it creates a presumption for law enforcement to stop, detain, and ultimately cite people if they see anyone drinking from an open container.
Whatever the issue is that plagues our community, I'm usually all over it.
Hello, the Bills are in the AFC Championship, Joe Biden is president, and this is the Rise Report. First off this week, the Buffalo Common Council is giving serious consideration to striking down Chapter 69 of the City Code, which criminalizes people who consume alcohol in public.
This law was passed in 1974 as part of a kind of craze, a law and order craze that swept New York and other states in the wake of political and social unrest, racial tensions that flared up in the late 60s through the early 70s.
The item is open, and Aiden Ryan is here to speak on this.
Here in Buffalo, I foiled BPD data on arrest records, and unsurprisingly, the vast majority of arrests were black people, and the vast majority of arrests occurred in outside of the Delaware district, primarily neighborhoods that were lower income and heavily African American.
So put more simply, if I'm a regular in Delaware Park, I can open up a bottle of wine or bring a six-pack and meet my friends there. Very few people who live next to MLK Park feel comfortable enjoying the same liberties. Following some of the BLM protests and the renewed focus on the role of law enforcement and on social justice and racial justice, additional groups got interested in this law and the problems that it poses. So now there's a really interesting, broad and diverse coalition of people and organizations who are pushing to have this repealed. The Partnership for the Public Good wrote a letter to the Common Council calling for repeal. Legal Aid Buffalo has called for repeal. I've had great conversations with folks at Showing Up for Racial Justice, Buffalo, and Free the People Coalition.
The lack of equity in enforcement may be clear, but some local businesses aren't sure how a repeal might affect them.
My name is George Katsas. I'm standing outside my restaurant here, the Burning Buffalo on Hurdle Avenue. Part of our business model is keeping people in the bar. Generally, in most businesses, the longer time you spend in the business generates more revenue. And the opportunity created by repealing the open container laws to just come and leave, on one hand, yes, it might bring more traffic in, but on the other hand, it's less time and money spent in the restaurant by each guest.
But just down the 400 in East Aurora, there is no such open container law.
It's a super walkable town with a really small footprint, and a lot of the population is concentrated in the village. So what that lends itself to is a lot of people walking, directly from their residences to where they're going and home. I think the lack of open container laws is great in that respect. Even for bigger events, when we have folks coming into town, like the music festival or Carolcade or things like that, people really look forward to being able to be, out in the street and enjoying themselves and have a drink in their hand and not necessarily have to worry about the implications of that being illegal.
Find out more about this effort at risecollaborative.com. You may remember Buffalo's punk rocker science man from our magazine, No Boundaries Issue 6. He's got a new album out.
Hi, I'm John Toohill. I just work for Science Man. Yeah, he bosses me around. Just me and him. That's kind of the whole point of it. Just being a absolute control freak. He doesn't like other people. Being a solo act sucks. No one wants to see the lead singer from the band they like with an acoustic guitar being like, I'm putting out my solo project. There's nothing worse than that. That's horrible. No one wants to see that. So I was like, let's create this other thing that sort of gives me an excuse to be that asshole, basically. It's just brilliantly called Science Man 2, because it's the second record. It's guitar music, it's rock and roll music, it's all that stuff. It was all incidental around just like what is around me. Like Steve Gedra is my boss, and that maniac is just screaming at me 24 hours a day. So, you know, he knows what I'm up to. So I was just like, you want to shake some sausage in this and be a weirdo. And he was, of course, on board. It just made sense. These are the people I can communicate with quickly. It's like impossible to shoot a music video during a pandemic. So you just like, hey, let me just like take 5 minutes of video of you doing your job.
From campaigning for bail reform to heading up the Fruit Belt's Community Land Trust, India Walton has been active in our community for quite some time. And now she's taking that energy to this year's race for mayor of Buffalo.
My name is India Walton. I am a mother, nurse, advocate, and I am the next mayor of the great city of Buffalo. I want to run because I want government to be accessible and representative of us all, especially those of us at the bottom who really keep this show going, right? When we think about who are essential workers, many of us don't have the privilege to stay home. There are people who are out here every day still working, keeping our economy going, and those are the folks who go unspoken for the most. And I just want people to know that there is someone who cares, and your government has a responsibility to give you that same level of care and attention. As an adolescent, my stepfather was incarcerated. He had a 25-year to life sentence. And I can remember going with my mom to Albany. We were members of Families Against Mandatory Minimums. I was young. I might have been 13 or 14 years old. And she fought for him and eventually got his sentence overturned and brought her man home. And I think that was really my first foray into formal activism. I look back on all of the challenges that I've overcome personally, all the problems that I've been able to solve in coalition with other community members and community organizations, and the success that we've been able to accomplish with very little assistance from the current administration. And I just know that we can amplify and spread all of the great work that we've been doing if we had a leader in office like me, who is willing to listen to people, who is willing to value the experiential expertise of so many people in the city of Buffalo. This is a resilient town, and I think that the people know what we need, and we just need someone who's compassionate to that.
Thanks again to Buffalocal for sponsoring this week's episode. You can support local by drinking local, beer brewed right here in Buffalo.